So, hello everyone. It's nice to see all of you. Today I've got a question from Yasmin. And she asks, do you have a specific meditation to get rid of negative thoughts and obsessive thinking? I'm struggling with obsessive thinking about a past mistake that's making me live in sadness, fear, and depression. So that's the question. I'm going to start with a disclaimer that all of these trainings, they depend on a few factors to be successful. I'm going to show you a bunch of techniques or things that you could be doing to deal with these obsessive things in your mind, thoughts and emotions and so forth. But all of those techniques, they require you to show up regularly, consistently. They require you to be supported, to have a supportive environment to be doing those. So that means you need to associate with people who have, to some extent, overcome those problems. For example, like a meditation group like this. And if you don't have that at your place at all, then I recommend you to start surrounding yourself with materials that help you study, like watch YouTube videos about these topics by reputable teachers. Read books about these subjects. And start implementing a regular routine for yourself in which you can actually progress with your practice. Another thing that's important is, as I've mentioned, progress. You need to actually see that you're getting somewhere with your practice. If you're doing something and you're doing it regularly, you want to know that something's happening that's actually going in the right direction. So you need to know what is your right direction, what is actually your vision, what do you want to attain. So you need to be very clear about your goals from the beginning when you start. I recommend you write them down. Write them down on a piece of paper, very clearly outline exactly how is that supposed to look like when you have gotten rid of your problem. How's your life supposed to be like? What kind of person will you be? How is your thinking like? How is your emotional state like? How would it look like when you're walking through a shopping mall? How would it look like when you eat your breakfast? Once you have attained your goal, what would be different in your life? And then you need to measure whether you're approaching this or not. Are you actually getting there or not? So measurement, associating with the wise ones, as we call it, associating with good friends that help you, that support you on the path. You're having a regular, consistent routine. Instead of jumping around, hopping from teacher to teacher, from teaching to teaching, like trying to find this, trying to find that, browsing through YouTube, reading this book, that book, different systems, that'll just end up in a mental salad in your head. You won't be getting anywhere if you're just jumping around wildly. So you need to, at some point, commit to any given technique. So these are all recipes for success. And among those, the most important is associating with wise friends. This is the root of all attainments of the path. Meaning, find a coach, a therapist, a counselor, be consistent with revisiting that person. Or read a book and be consistent with implementing the practices. If you get stuck, contact those who have had success with those practices so they can guide you further instead of just skipping the technique. It's very common nowadays that people, they start something and then they feel like it doesn't work, so they change the technique instead of actually working on the technique in better ways. So that would be very important. So now, having said that, I'm going to show you 4 different ways of dealing with obsessive thoughts. And they're progressively more subtle, progressively more difficult, and progressively more efficient at dealing with obsessive thinking and emotions that come with such obsessive thoughts. The first one is perhaps the most well-known method, and we're all familiar with it. It's called suppression. Now, there's nothing wrong with suppressing things, all right? Like if you were to put a pot on a patch of grass and you leave the pot there, the grass will gradually die underneath the pot, right? All you need to do is just keep the pot there. The problem is not with suppression, the problem is with people being inconsistent with their suppression. That's why it doesn't work. So they don't really suppress things. So things do not really starve. They re-engage their problems. Say you have an addiction, you would suppress the behavior that leads you to the addiction, say alcoholism, and your behavior would be to drink, to get drunk. By just suppressing that behavior, you could get really far. If you would consistently suppress that, if you wouldn't go back to it, if you wouldn't allow for cracks to show. Having said that, it is also one of the most difficult methods. You have to really have a ton of strength to maintain that kind of suppression to an extent where the habit that you've had previously can actually starve away. Yes. And of course, you also need to be clever about it. You can't just starve a habit and not implement a better habit at the same time. Because then you're just left with an empty space, and an empty space wants to be filled up with stuff. Question is, what is it going to be filled up with? Are you in charge of that? You better be. Otherwise, someone else is going to just replace one addiction with another, one habit with another. And it may just be equally bad. So I have to mention suppression as one of the methods that are efficient. Let's say you're angry at someone and you would like to punch them in the face. It's actually good to suppress that. You don't want to be running around and expressing every single emotion that you have wildly without any restrictions. Imagine if that was the case. Imagine we all would not suppress ourselves at all at some points. We would all just completely express everything that comes into our minds every given moment. That would be crazy. We'd live in a totally crazy world. So it's actually good to suppress things. That is something that is recommended by a lot of saints of the past, including the Buddha. He was very consistent of this. You should suppress negative actions. You should suppress things that are harmful to yourself and others. It seems to me like in modern day culture, suppression is really unpopular. It's like you should just live out your dream and you should just do whatever you want. But imagine if that was actually the case, if we would all be just doing whatever we want, whenever we want to. That would result in great chaos. Like, I don't want to stop at this red traffic light right now. I would like to just keep going because that's how I feel like. Imagine. Right? Imagine you're married and you're just attracted to someone else all of a sudden and you're just like, okay, just have that other person and just have sex with them and move on and do this and that. It would just be crazy. We'd have to restrain ourselves. There's great virtue in restraint. Restraint is actually a virtue, a quality that is central to the path. The word sila, which is one of the 3 trainings on the Buddhist path, could be translated as restrained, being able to restrain yourself, keeping yourself from doing what is harmful. And of course, then cultivating the other side of the coin, cultivating what is beneficial. Right? So suppression is like that. It's restraining yourself from from feeding into a habit that you may have. A habit of thinking, a habit of feeling, and so forth. Yes? Oh, here's another point that's really important before we go into the other methods. All of those methods, they depend on you to become aware first. So you need to know what you're doing before you are just able to even apply any of those methods. If you're not conscious that you're having negative thoughts, if you don't know that this is what's happening right now in your mind, you can't deal with them. You'd just be lost in them. You'd just be swept away. First, you need to know that this is what's going on right now. So the awareness that you want to cultivate, first of all, is the awareness of what am I doing right now? This is a simple first training. Get really good at that. Spend a few months cultivating this intensely throughout the entire day. What am I doing right now? Am I complaining right now? Am I harboring negative, depressive thoughts right now? Do I think in ways that are harmful to myself, to my body, to my state, and to others even? Or am I thinking happy thoughts right now? Is that what I'm doing right now? Am I showering right now? Am I eating right now? Am I walking right now? Like get some, the quality that I'm referring to right here is called alertness. You get some alertness. You know what's happening while it's happening. You know what you're doing while you're doing it. That's the first skill you want. And that's, by the way, one of the reasons why we sit down every day and meditate. So you cultivate that skill, that quality, so you can know what's going on right now. So for example, right now, as I'm talking with you, I know that I'm talking. But it could be the case that I don't know, so the talking just simply happens. But right now I do know. I hear myself. I hear the sound that comes out of my mouth. Okay? So the first method is suppression. Second method is, you could call it the method of shifting your attention to something else, like a method of avoiding. So for example, let's say you're thinking negative suppressive thoughts. Instead of doing that, you just shift over to positive, uplifting thoughts. And so every time you do this successfully, you're implementing a different neuronal network. There is a possibility for your brain to be rewired. It's called neuroplasticity. Your brain is able to think different thoughts. And what you do habitually in your brain forms new associations, new connections with your neuronal pathways, right? Like what you're doing right now is the result of having done something hundreds and thousands of times, so you have a very particular neuronal network in your brain that supports these behaviors, so they come automatically. It's very easy for you to do them. You don't even have to pay attention. They just happen automatically in the background. So what you want is to notice, again, you have alertness. Oh, right now I'm in this negative train of thoughts. Then you exit that train and then you board a positive train of thoughts instead. In the beginning, that will feel super awkward and really weird. That's a sign that you're learning something new. You're retraining. It's very dull, actually. There's nothing much intelligent about it. You're just doing something different instead. That's all it is. And of course, that works really well if you have a connection to the previous negative thought. Let's say you say, I hate ice cream. That's your negative thought. I hate ice cream. I'm just simplifying things right now. You're hating ice cream. Then you could reframe that. You could say, well, I don't hate all ice cream. I kind of like vanilla though. That would be reframing it, making it a bit more positive. You're not just saying, I hate ice cream, and then you change it to, I love flowers. That's a bit too, it's not really connected. There is no connection there. So you need to kind of dock onto the previous neuronal network and restructure it. It's like taking a turn when you wouldn't normally take a turn. Well, let's explore that alleyway. Let's turn left here. And that's still connected to the main street, right, on which you've been running for years and years. So there has to be a connection for it to be really efficient. So that's a diversion, maybe. We can call this tactic of diversion. So the first is suppression, the second one is diversion. You reroute the energy into a different field that would be better and more positive. You have to find out what that could be. What kind of negative thoughts do you have? And how could they be rephrased in a more positive way that is more uplifting? So you have to write down all of your negative thoughts, and then on the right side of the paper you write a positive version of them. And then you practice that positive version stubbornly. As I said, it's really dull. You just need to do that hundreds and thousands of times again, so you will create a different type of habit inside of yourself. Gratitude is a really good one. Kindness is a really good one, just as an antidote to negative thoughts. Just applying an antidote. Like diverting the energy. With gratitude, you could, for example, if you think negative thoughts, then it is obviously at odds with gratitude. That is complaining, oh, this is bad in my life, that's bad about myself, that's bad about my environment and other people. So think about what's good then. What is good about your life? What's good about other people? What's good about the environment? Train yourself, retrain yourself to see the good. Okay? So that's the second method. The third method is the method of kindness. The method of kindness is really just accepting the fact that there is a negative side to your psyche. And that's okay. You don't have to be a positive hippie that's only positive and just constantly happy and nothing ever affects you. Like, yes, things do affect you, right? It's normal to be upset. It's normal to feel sad, to even be depressed. It's normal for us to have bad times and downs and ups. So all of that belongs. So once you learn to open up to all of yourself while you're in a bad state, then that bad state can be processed within that openness, and it will kind of process itself and resolve itself. It's quite miraculous, actually. Like when we're in, think of yourself, okay? When you're in a bad time throughout your life, and you're down, you're depressed, you're unhappy, what do you want? What do you really want in that moment? If you boil that down, if you follow that question, you will always come to the same kind of thing, which is, I want to be loved unconditionally. I want to be received, appreciated, seen, paid attention to unconditionally. We want to be seen with that unconditional warmth and light, where you know that everything about you and who you are and where you're at is okay. That ultimate kind of love, God's divine love, if you will, is precisely that. To be received in this ultimate love means there's absolutely nothing about you that is rejected. There's nothing in you that needs to worry. You're totally at home. And you'd never be kicked out. That's what we all desire deeply. We desire this coming home, this profound coming home into love. To be fully received and accepted and know that it's okay. You're okay. This is life-changing. That state alone is life-changing. And you can provide that to yourself. One of your greatest superpowers is that you can love yourself, meaning that you can receive all of yourself with this love. That you can make yourself a home to all of yourself. To every single aspect of your psyche, to every single physical aspect, even illness, failure, problems, You can receive them in this infinite love. And everything is allowed to be the way it is. You're not having any conflict anymore with the universe. It's not like, here is my little ego that wants to have things his way. That's a problem, because the universe goes its own way. And I'm not separate from that. I'm not like a separate agent in the universe that somehow is surrounded by it. I'm just as much part of it as everything else is. And so are you. Would you ever say that there is one atom in the universe that doesn't belong where it is? Wouldn't that be like an absurd statement? Like you go around, you imagine like with a little, how's that called, pincher? With a little pincher? Tweezer, maybe, yeah. And you just pick out that little atom and you go like, oh, that's the mistake. Here's a mistake. Guys, I found the mistake in the universe. It's this atom. It doesn't belong here. Shouldn't be there. That's absurd, right? Every atom belongs, doesn't it? How about you? Do you belong or not? I think that's a fundamental problem of our psyche. We feel out of place. Because that's exactly the problem of the self, the ego that is artificially built in our psyche. A sense of, I'm at the center of the universe and the universe revolves around a me. That thing, that little me, is separate from everything else. It's cut off. And that is the ultimate suffering. But we don't perceive it as suffering because it's just our natural state. We're so in it all the time. We don't feel that this is a problem because we don't know anything else. But really it is the ultimate problem. Like my teacher gave this beautiful example of, we're all like clay pots that float in the ocean. They're filled with salt water. The goal is to break the pot. But you feel safe in your little clay pot, but within you it's just salt water. It's ocean, basically. You already could be at one with the great. But you're not because of that little clay pot. That would be ego, okay? And I'm really simplifying things right now. I don't believe in ego to be a thing, really. It's more like a hallucination, a kind of mirage. It doesn't actually exist. Your sense of self doesn't actually exist as a solid entity. There is but the universe. There is but energy and consciousness. There is nothing else. There is no little Tobi that's in charge of energy and consciousness. There is just energy and consciousness, period. Love goes close to that because it receives things simply as they are. And it learns that it's okay for the universe to do its thing. I don't need to have any beef with it. I don't need to fight it. I don't need to resist. I can relax and surrender to the great. One of the problems that we have of receiving love is we can't relax and surrender. We want to be in control. Look at couples, relationships. That's the problem. You want to control. Why do you want to control? Because you're afraid. Why are you afraid? Because you're separate. You need to control everything from your little separate egoic state. It's no wonder that there is conflict. It takes two for there to be conflict. Love doesn't think in those terms. It is all embracing. It is unconditional. It doesn't have any requirements. It receives you as you are. And in that space you can heal. So learn to receive your obsessive thoughts. I made a pause here because who labels your thoughts obsessive? Love wouldn't do that. It would simply see them as thoughts and receive them as that. It doesn't reject them. It doesn't hold them either. It simply allows them to do their thing. Kindness gives freedom. Fear seeks to control. It is in freedom that we prosper. It is in control that we die. All right? Number 4, the fourth method, is the most subtle one, which is the method of wisdom. You see directly into the nature of your thoughts. And you see without any abstraction, you don't give them any attributes. You see them for what they really are. You stop thinking about your thoughts. Instead, you look directly at them. And you see that there is actually nothing that's of any threatening nature. It's just thoughts. It's less than air. It's nothing. It's as threatening as a dream. How do you feel when you wake up from a nightmare? Oh, thank God it was just a dream, right? We say that. It's just a dream. Yeah. And your thoughts are only threatening to you as long as you don't know that they are just thoughts. It's just thinking. It's just like literally, it's just electricity firing in your skull. That's all it is. Why get so upset about it? It's just a bunch of stuff that happens. Like, why would we get so upset about stuff that happens? It's just stuff that happens, like wind, like water. Why are we so interested in it? It's just like, it would be like an old man that watches children play in a sandbox, and he gets really upset about a part of their game that they're playing, and he gets really involved in it and starts a fight with those children. It's like, there is no need to get that involved. It's child's play. Why do we get so involved in our thoughts? Why is there so much interest in them? Why are we so invested in them? It's a bunch of nothings. It's just empty appearances. Just words and pictures. What else is there to it? Nothing. It is only through wisdom that you can clearly see that. The same goes for your body and the sensations in it. Feelings in your body, well, are just feelings. Relax. Goodness, why do we make such a drama out of our feelings? It's just energies moving. Right? And you can train that to a point where even really, really tough feelings do not get to you, because also they're just feelings. It's just feeling. One of the things that we trained with my teacher was precisely that. Just standing quietly for relatively long amounts of time in an uncomfortable posture. And then relaxing in that posture. And the teacher would go around and say, relax, it's just feeling. It's just feeling. Relax. And the more you relax, the worse it got. And that was precisely the goal, to just relax through all of that. And make relaxation the priority, not complaining. So when you are overwhelmed by feelings and thoughts, make relaxation your priority. Well, it's just feelings, it's just thinking. Relax, it's okay. That is wisdom. You see it for what it actually is. You don't turn it into something other than it is. Like, it's, quote, bad, or it's, quote, good. Now you have a problem. It's just feeling and thinking. That's all it is. Why get involved at all? Why make it personal at all? Why add a me and my to it? These are my feelings, my thoughts. No, they're just feelings and thoughts. They exist all over the world, I can guarantee you that. Feeling and thought exists everywhere. Why make it personal? Bodies are existing everywhere. Why make it personal? My body. I am getting old. I am too fat. I am too slim. No, it's just a body. Relax. It'll pass. So wisdom helps you to relax profoundly because you're just not making any drama out of stuff anymore. Of course, in a materialist society and universe, matter is really important. Stuff is really important. But to a meditator, stuff is not important at all. Emptiness is. Space is. Knowing is. Consciousness is. But stuff, nah. Stuff comes and goes, right? Stuff is constantly changing. Why bother? It's like as a river flows by and you would jump into the river and get all upset that it's flowing the way it shouldn't flow. It's like silly. The river flows exactly the way it should flow. The problem is you hop in there, you get yourself wet, and you get yourself tired fighting against the stream. Just get out of the river and let it do its thing. Why bother about the river? Why bother about feelings and thoughts? Just let them flow. The problem is you are in their way. Wisdom means get out of the way. That's also an experience of love, by the way. You get out of the way of things. That's what love does. It gives freedom. It doesn't seek control. All right. So these are the 4 methods. Suppression, diversion, kindness or loving kindness, and wisdom. All being progressively more subtle. Meaning, for all of these methods, you need much more stable alertness and mindfulness. You need to be able to see deeply. Your mind shouldn't be shaky and jumpy. If you want to see clearly, you need to have a stable mind. That's why you should practice meditation, so you can stabilize your mind. And in order to learn practice meditation, join a meditation group. Make sure that you're joining a group where stillness is the main focus to cultivate, not fantasy. You don't want to be sitting there with people doing fantastic mental travels. Seek out a group where you learn to stabilize your mind, where that is central to the meditative path. And hopefully there's also an aspect of cultivating wisdom and insight and understanding yourself more deeply. So if you really want to build mental skill, make your mind stable first. And then you're able to work with your mind. If your mind is still unstable and jumping around, the typical monkey mind, you have nothing to work with. You have no tool. You cannot direct your mind in any way, so you can't do anything with it. It's going to be really hard to apply what I was just talking about. So, that's all that comes to mind for this. I hope it was helpful.